The restaurant hummed with the quiet elegance of old money and whispered conversations. Crystal chandeliers cast warm pools of light across white tablecloths, and the scent of truffle oil and aged wine hung in the air like expensive perfume. This was Bellecourt, the kind of establishment where reservations were made 3 months in advance and the waitstaff moved like ballet dancers through the narrow spaces between tables. Emma Chen had worked there for exactly 8 months. She tied her black apron with practiced fingers, smoothed down her crisp white shirt, and prepared for another Friday evening shift. The work was demanding, but she needed it. Her art history degree hung on the wall of her tiny apartment, beautiful and essentially useless when it came to paying rent in the city. She had learned to smile through aching feet. She had learned to remember orders without writing them down. She had learned which tables tipped well and which regulars preferred to be left alone with their thoughts and their wine. What she hadn't learned was how to predict the moment that would change everything. It started simply enough. Emma was refilling water glasses at table 7 when her phone vibrated in her pocket. She ignored it, of course. Personal calls during service were strictly forbidden. But it vibrated again, and again. The insistent buzz against her hip made her pause. Her manager, Marcus, was in the kitchen. The dining room was unusually quiet, that strange lull that sometimes happened between courses when everyone was chewing and thinking and savoring. Emma glanced around, then carefully pulled out her phone. 23 missed calls from her grandmother. Emma's heart dropped into her stomach. Nona never called during work hours. She barely used her phone at all, preferring to save her minutes for emergencies. This many calls could only mean one thing. Something was very, very wrong. The phone buzzed again in her hand. Emma looked toward the kitchen, then at the nearest emergency exit. She had no choice. She answered. Pronto. Nona. Her voice came out in rapid Italian, the language of her childhood summers in Tuscany, of her grandmother's kitchen, of bedtime stories and lullabies. Cosa è successo? Stai bene? Her grandmother's voice crackled through the speaker, high and frightened. She was talking about Emma's grandfather, about chest pains, about an ambulance. Emma's hand flew to her mouth. She turned away from the dining room, pressing the phone closer to her ear, trying to hear over the blood rushing through her head. Dove adesso? All'ospedale? Emma asked, her Italian flowing faster as panic set in. Where is he now? At the hospital. She was so focused on her grandmother's words that she didn't notice the silence that had fallen over the restaurant. She didn't see the way conversations had stopped at the large corner table. She didn't notice the man in the impeccably tailored suit who had gone completely still, his wine glass frozen halfway to his lips. Marco Santoro had not heard his native language spoken so fluently, so naturally, outside of his own circle in years. And certainly not here, in this American restaurant, from the lips of a young waitress who looked as Italian as fortune cookies. Emma continued speaking, her voice soft but urgent. Si, Nonna, vengo subito. Don't worry. I'm coming right now. Everything will be okay. She ended the call and stood for a moment, trying to steady her breathing. That's when she turned around and saw him watching her. Table 12. The corner booth. 6 men in dark suits, all of them looking at her with expressions ranging from curiosity to something she couldn't quite name. But it was the man in the center who held her gaze. He was perhaps 40, with salt and pepper hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble. His eyes were dark and impossibly deep, and they were fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Emma's mouth went dry. She recognized power when she saw it. And this man wore power like other people wore cologne. I'm sorry, she stammered in English, holding up her phone like evidence. Family emergency. I have to go. She didn't wait for a response. She rushed toward the kitchen, nearly colliding with Marcus as he emerged with a tray of appetizers. Emma, what? I'm so sorry, Marcus. My grandfather's in the hospital. I have to leave, right now. To his credit, Marcus only hesitated for a moment. Go, he said. We'll manage. Emma grabbed her jacket and her bag from the staff room and headed for the back exit. Her hands were shaking as she pushed through the door. The cool evening air hit her face, and she took a deep breath, trying to think. The hospital was across town. If she ran to the subway, if the train came quickly, if... Signorina. The voice came from behind her, smooth and dark as espresso. Emma spun around. The man from table 12 stood in the alley entrance, backlit by the restaurant's warm glow. Up close, he was even more striking. Even more dangerous. "I heard you on the phone," he said in Italian, his accent pure Roma. "Your grandfather is ill." Emma nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Something about this man made her want to run, but her feet seemed rooted to the ground. "Where is the hospital?" he asked. "Street. Vincent's. Across the city." He nodded once, decisively. "My driver will take you." "I couldn't possibly." "You could. You will." It wasn't a request. He pulled out his phone and spoke briefly to someone, then looked back at Emma. "A black Mercedes will arrive in 30 seconds. My driver's name is Giuseppe. He will wait for you at the hospital and bring you home when you're ready." Emma's mind spun. "Why would you do this? You don't even know me." Something flickered in his dark eyes. Almost a smile, but not quite. "You spoke to your grandmother with such love. Such worry. Family is." He paused, searching for the right word. "Family is everything. Go to your grandfather. Make sure he knows he is loved." A sleek black Mercedes pulled up to the alley entrance, as if summoned by magic. "Thank you," Emma whispered. "Thank you so much. I don't know how to." "Go," he said simply. Emma ran to the car. Giuseppe, an older man with kind eyes, opened the door for her. As the car pulled away, Emma looked back. The man still stood in the alley, watching her leave. He raised one hand in a small gesture of farewell. Then he pulled out his phone. Inside the restaurant, one of the men at table 12 approached Marco Santoro nervously. "Capo, the girl is gone." "Should I find out everything about her?" Marco said quietly. "Her full name, her address, her family, everything." And then, Marco took a sip of his wine, remembering the way she had spoken, the genuine fear and love in her voice, the tears in her eyes. Something had stirred in his chest when he heard her Italian, so perfect, so pure. Something he thought had died years ago. And then, he said slowly, "We wait. But when she returns to work." He set down his glass with careful precision. "Don't let her leave without speaking to me first." The man nodded and disappeared to make calls. Marco returned to his table, but the meal had lost his interest. His companions spoke around him, discussing business, discussing deals and territories and money. He heard none of it. He was thinking about a young woman with tears on her cheeks and Italy in her voice, who loved her grandmother enough to risk her job, who ran toward trouble instead of away from it. He was thinking about the way his heart had stuttered when she turned around and met his eyes. He was thinking that some things, some people, were worth disrupting carefully laid plans. Hours passed. Marco finished his dinner, conducted his business meeting, made decisions that would affect hundreds of lives. But part of his mind remained in that alley, in that moment when he had told her to go to her grandfather. His phone buzzed. A text from Giuseppe: "The grandfather is stable. Tests show minor heart event, not serious." The girl is relieved. She cries happy tears now. "Very loving family. Should I bring her home?" Asterisk. Marco typed back, "Yes." And Giuseppe: "Drive carefully. Very carefully." Asterisk. He could almost feel Giuseppe's surprise through the phone. Another text arrived, this one from his researcher, Emma Chen. Age 25. Art history degree. No criminal record. Grandmother Lucia Rossetti, from Montepulciano. Girl spent childhood summers in Italy. Grandfather Antonio Rossetti. Both now permanent U.S. residents. She works 2 jobs to help support them. Clean. Decent. Good girl. Asterisk. Marco read the information twice. Emma Chen. Even her name was a bridge between 2 worlds. He made a decision. The next morning, Emma arrived at Bellecourt for the lunch shift, exhausted but grateful. Her grandfather was going to be fine. The doctors said it was a warning, nothing more. Change his diet, reduce his stress, take his medication. He would live to garden and complain and tell stories for many more years. And it was all thanks to a stranger's kindness. If Emma had taken the subway, she might have arrived too late for the critical first hour. Giuseppe had driven like a man possessed, getting her there in record time. She owed that dark-eyed stranger everything. She didn't even know his name. Marcus met her at the door. "Emma, how is your grandfather?" "He's going to be okay. Thank you for letting me go." "I know it was. There's someone here to see you," Marcus interrupted. He looked nervous. In the private dining room, Emma's stomach dropped. "Am I fired?" No, nothing like that. Just, go talk to him." Please. The private dining room was empty except for one man sitting at a table by the window, morning light streaming through the glass, making him look almost ethereal. He stood when she entered. Signorina Chen, Marco Santoro said. Please, sit. Emma sat. Her hands were shaking again. Your grandfather? He asked in Italian. He will recover. Thanks to you. I don't know how to repay. He waved this away. I have a proposition for you. Here it comes, Emma thought. The price. There was always a price. I own several businesses, Marco continued. Import, export, various enterprises. I need someone who speaks Italian fluently. Someone who understands both cultures. Someone who can be trusted. He leaned forward slightly. I need someone like you. I'm a waitress, Emma said slowly. I have an art history degree. I don't know anything about business. You can learn business. But integrity, loyalty, love of family. He shook his head. These cannot be taught. I saw all of them in you last night. In one phone call, I saw your heart. Emma stared at him. Why do I feel like there's more to this story? A real smile crossed his face this time, transforming him completely. Because you are intelligent. Yes, there is more. I will be honest with you. I am not always a good man. I do not always operate in the light. But I have never lied to someone I respect. He met her eyes directly. I am offering you a job. A real job, with real pay. You would work as my translator, my cultural liaison. You would help me communicate with my business partners in Italy. The work is legitimate. I give you my word. And if I say no, then you say no. You return to your tables, to your life. I will not bother you again. But Giuseppe will still be available to drive your grandparents to medical appointments. This I offer freely, with no strings attached. Emma's mind raced. This was crazy. He was clearly someone important, someone powerful, maybe even someone dangerous. Every instinct told her to run. But she thought about her 2 jobs, her student loans, her tiny apartment. She thought about her grandparents, aging and alone except for her. She thought about the kindness in Giuseppe's eyes, the way this stranger had helped her without hesitation. Can I think about it? She asked. Of course. Take all the time you need. He slid a card across the table. Call me when you decide. Emma picked up the card. Heavy stock, embossed lettering. Just a name and a number. Marco Santoro. May I ask you one thing? Emma said. Anything. Why me? Really? Marco was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft, almost vulnerable. Because when you spoke Italian to your grandmother, I heard home. I heard the person I used to be, before life made me hard. Because I watched you choose love over fear, family over security. Because in a world of people who only take, you gave everything the moment someone needed you. He paused. Because I have not felt hope in a very long time, Signorina Chen. And when you turned around and looked at me last night, I felt it again. Just for a moment. I would very much like to feel it again. Emma left the restaurant with his card burning a hole in her pocket. She walked for hours, thinking, weighing, deciding. 3 days later, she called the number. Marco answered on the first ring. Pronto, Emma said. When do I start? She could hear the smile in his voice. Come to this address tomorrow morning. Wear something comfortable. We have much work to do. As Emma hung up the phone, she couldn't shake the feeling that her life had just split into 2 distinct parts, before the phone call, and everything that would come after. She wasn't wrong. But that, as they say, is another story entirely.